The second thing I want to say is that the issue of LGBT rights, queer rights, is not the most important issue in the world. And many people in this room who are themselves heterosexual will not quite understand about queer people, and they certainly won't want to talk about it too much or hear about it too much. And I understand that. It's something which, if you are LGBT, you do think about a lot, because you have an evolution in your life from the point where you begin to realise, as a little boy or a little girl, that you just have this aspect of you which is a bit different to the majority. In all other ways, you're just like everyone else, but there's this aspect. And generally speaking, who has their phone on in this room? I think the person with the phone on should go to the back of the class, stand in the corner with a duncer's cap.
So you could phone me so I could reach you.
I'd smack you, but you might enjoy it too. Anyway, I think it's important for me to say that if you are not LGBT, then you shouldn't feel anxious that you don't really fully understand it and that you don't want to hear a lot about it and you find it a bit boring and you've got other things. And there are others who suffer much more discrimination, and they have to be considered, and their priorities are often more important than the priorities of LGBT people in a prosperous country like Australia. For example, I think marriage equality is quite important as a sort of human rights issue of equality of all citizens in a legal right which is made by the Federal Parliament of Australia under a constitution which proclaims itself to be secular. So I think it's quite important. But it's not the most important issue in our country. It's not the most important issue. I've been with my partner, Johan, for 44 years. We celebrated our anniversary on the 11th of February this year, 44 years. And we got by perfectly well without marriage. In fact, we were a bit uncertain as to whether we would get married if we had marriage equality. We've now decided, after a lot of solemn talk about the subject, that if there were marriage equality, we would get married. Partly because of all the work of people, straight and gay, to get marriage equality for all Australians. But in terms of the terrible deprivations of human rights in our world, and many of them in our country, it's not the most important issue, because you can live without marriage. You don't have to have the confetti. If you have a very happy relationship, a loving and sustaining, challenging relationship, then formalising it is good and would be nice, and it would certainly be nice to get the presents, because we've been giving presents all our lives and we've never got any presents back. And it's unfair, ladies and gentlemen. It's fundamentally unfair. But I don't think it's sort of the biggest human rights issue of all time. It's a matter of making things just and equal for all citizens, whatever their sexual orientation. So I start with sort of putting these things in perspective. But having said all that, I know enough about the law and about society and about the prejudice against LGBT people to know that it's not very nice, and it's not over, and it's still going on, and sadly a lot of it is caused by religious people. All my life I've been mixing with lawyers. Now, lawyers are very lovely people, but they do tend to love their text. They love a text. And religious people are a bit the same. You know, they get this text, they get the text in Leviticus. A man shall not lie with a man as with a woman, for if he does, that is an abomination, and surely he shall be put to death. That's the passage in Leviticus. There are similar passages in Genesis, and they've been interpreted to be Holy Writ. God is supposed to have given this and actually written the document, and therefore you're sort of stuck with it. And that means that many religions, not only Christianity, but Judaism, which came first, Christianity and Islam, but also I discovered, talking to the Dalai Lama, Buddhism and Hinduism. They've all got these passages in their text. And the big problem is that the passages now have to confront the scientific knowledge we have about GLBT and the fact that we know that a certain proportion of people in their life are lifelong GLBT. Poor things, they can't help it, they don't decide it, they don't choose it, it's just them. And that brings me back to where I started. You know, you grow up, you suddenly realise this attraction, you know at least in my time, it's not a good look. You're supposed to be thoroughly and completely ashamed of yourself. You must never, never, never talk about it to anybody. You can't talk about it to your parents, you can't talk about it to your siblings. You've got to bottle it all up, hide, keep your head down, keep working, study hard, or play lots of sport, do lots of exercise, take your mind off it, and maybe it'll go away. Well, it doesn't go away. And we know this now because of the science. It's amazing that nothing much happened about it. Science didn't really look at sexuality. But you know, I was writing yesterday to a very distinguished Australian artist, and I said to him, why in art do you never see any, in formal art, in art galleries, you never see any representation of human sexuality? Do you? I mean, if you think about it, have you ever been to an art gallery? You look a sort of rather yuppie type of group of people, and you probably never go to art galleries, but there's nothing about something that is really important in people's lives, which is sex. I mean, people spend an awful lot of time thinking about it. Some people spend an awful lot of time doing something about it. But you go into an art gallery and there's no representation of human sex, which is a curious